Welcome back, everybody, to the Owl Nest podcast, episode 18. 18?
Oh my
I
gosh.
think it's
Yeah,
18.
I
I
think
think
it
it's
is.
18.
Man, can you believe it's been 18 weeks of this? Well, there were a couple break weeks, but 18 episodes?
18 episodes.
Crazy. We're getting old.
We still have like another quarter of the season to go and then some. But we're all along for the ride, watching these crazy clown fest take place in front of us. And we got more of that this week. This meta continues to make matches unpredictable and puts us into the final week in which basically every single match that happens this coming week like matters, which I think is the first time that's happened.
Yeah.
Because like mid-season, it was like almost like the last 2 weeks almost didn't matter.
Yeah, and we can like talk about it a little more, but I think like one of the big things is it seems like the and maybe I'm just used to like League of Legends where it's like the entire year and then it's half the year and then playoffs, half the year and then playoffs, and every team plays like every team twice each like split. Where it's like I feel like Overwatch teams don't play very many opponents within each match. Like I mean they're all pretty long matches. Like matches are pretty long
There.
in Overwatch. That being said, it's like each team only plays like 5 matches per
6
matches per. Yeah, so it's like most teams don't play very much. Like every match is pretty dang important. And so it's like you have one bad week, like yeah, that's fine long term, but within the context of a single tournament, like
your tournament life
ending.
is basically over. But before we get into the matches, obviously, as always, some slight team news. Not a whole lot this week, and all of it was staffing. No player movement, obviously, because, well, can't really do that anymore. Starting things off, Boston Uprising have let go of head coach Laurie. Doesn't surprise me, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, well, it was like Boston for a minute there was looking like they could do things, and then they just kind of fell back a little bit.
And then they decided to bench Punk again, and look how that went. Again, Punk's father on Twitter has not been going very lightly on the Uprising lately. He's been like I don't understand why they traded for Mag. Punk was doing fine, but now Laurie is out, and obviously Huck stepped away earlier in the season, so this Mineral is the only one that really remains for the most part of the head management. And so I'm curious to see where Boston goes moving forward, because they currently have no Korean staff. Their head coach now, Ascroft, is French, and then Mineral, their GM, is Swedish, and then their assistant GM is American. And they've got 6 Koreans on the roster, a Canadian, an American, and an Australian. So I'm interested in which direction they decide to go, if they try and make it a more mixed roster, if they decide to go fully Western. I imagine Boston at the end of the season, we're going to see some movement in this team in terms of how they want to structure it, with how Mineral decides to take things, and even how Ascroft goes with the rest of the season. But Boston are not because Titans looks like they're going to make the tournament and Boston won't. Boston is going to, in going to the final tournament, is going to be in danger of losing their play-in spot to the Titans. So Boston needs to kind of get their stuff together in these last couple weeks of the season if they want to have, because I feel like if Boston doesn't make play-ins, that's a disappointment. Like Boston should be expecting to be in those play-in spots, but they are trending downwards, whereas Titans are trending upwards. So we'll see where this team ends.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. I don't think things are super hopeful for Boston, and it almost feels like they've kind of already started moving on past the season a little bit. Just in terms of like, I don't know. I don't know how much hope they have for the future, but
hopefully they have some hope that they keep playing. But speaking of the Vancouver Titans, they had some shakeups at the higher end of things as soon as Twitter wants to load up. So current, or I guess now previous general manager Justin Hughes stepped down. He was the general manager who came in when Titans imploded back in 2020. So he's been with the team since they rebuilt after the runaway squad kind of took off because of COVID and stuff. So he stepped down, and in his place, Baroy, who used to be a coach for Boston Uprising, is now the Titans GM. The Titans are trending upwards. I mean, ever since Deepay was signed as the coach, it's been nothing but good feelings from the Titans. And if they're able to make the tournament and able to get some wins in the next tournament cycle, we could see them in the play-ins, and I think that is a huge turnaround compared to literally every season that this version of the Titans has existed. It's been nothing but sadness.
I think when we look back on this season, there will be a lot of storylines that we kind of think of, but I think one of the biggest ones is the fact that the two teams that were undisputed, the bottom two teams of the league, were able to fight out of that. And if both the Spitfire and Titans make playoffs, that's so huge. Even if it just play-ins for playoffs, I think that would be huge.
And I would love to see the Titans in there. I think they've definitely worked for it, and they've shown in their matches this tournament cycle that they can play against at least their contemporaries in the lower half of the league, but even take matches away from middle of the pack teams like Justice. So good on the Titans. They're trending the right way. And then just a small other minor thing. New York have brought in Artist as a coach. It doesn't say...
Minor, that's huge.
It doesn't say what kind of coach. It just says back on the team as a coach. Good job, New York. You're not looking too great, and your season is not looking too great either. But hey, you've got a new coach. Enough of the boring stuff.
I just realized this is two episodes in a row that I forget to turn my light on until we're already started.
We've already started. We're already going.
Ignore my
much better. Let's talk about some matches, shall we?
Yeah, let's
start with your London Spitfire, shall we?
Can we talk about someone else?
Nope, we got to start with your London Spitfire. I feel like
they were close.
They got
maps.
And I feel like this week their matches really showcased what we had talked about at the very beginning of the stage of Backbone's Genji. And when they were playing Atlanta and Justice, we really saw what London thought about Backbone's Genji compared to his Mei. When they're coming out of spawn on Gibraltar with Mei, that's pretty telling.
Well, and that's just kind of the reality of the situation. It's a known fact that Backbone isn't a strong Genji player, and that London doesn't really have that. And so when you have a meta like this that's kind of dependent on that, I expected them to have kind of a rough tournament cycle. That being said, last week they kind of got all of our hopes up by looking okay, but I think when it comes down to it, they just got Backbone diffed.
Yeah, Assassin and Speedily kind of had their way with, and it's not to say that the Mei didn't work, but it's Mei works on points and maps where she's almost made to work, like Nepal Village, or maps even some Midtown she can work as well, or Hollywood at some points. But Gibraltar, if you're trying to play Mei on Gibraltar, then you have a lot of faith in the Mei and not a lot of faith in the Genji.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting about the Atlanta match, at least, was coming into this week and even coming into this season, Speedily was a big deal. He was a big signing. Everyone's been talking about him the whole time. And he didn't get a lot of practice with Atlanta, but honestly, did he London didn't look bad against Speedily.
Well, and Speedily himself said in the post-match interview that he wasn't very happy with his performance. We saw he looked better in the Outlaws match, so he was definitely still warming up in the Spitfire match. But it was telling that it's a Speedily on 3 days of practice was diffing Backbone.
I mean, he wasn't diffing. Backbone.
He was having more of an impact though, in kind of just more in general.
Yeah, but that's to be expected. You have someone who's supposed to be a Genji main player. I mean, Genji is one of his big champions and stuff, and the fact that Backbone didn't look terrible against it, like it shows that Backbone isn't a good Genji. Like he's not great Genji,
But he's not terrible.
Not like a terrible. Like he's not like last year Genji bad for him. You know, it's like if Super were to make that comment he made last year today, like it wouldn't really stick the same way because like Backbone isn't a terrible Genji anymore.
No,
and so I think
go ahead.
yeah, so I'm not like disappointed to like I'm a little disappointed, but I'm not like upset.
No, I think their loss
lost.
Their loss to the Reign isn't one to be like down on because the Reign
was
looking better.
Sad
but the Justice loss doesn't look as good because it was a back and forth, so at least it wasn't like a reverse sweep kind of loss. But it was a back and forth, and they played more Mei in the Justice match than they did in the Reign match. I mean, I'm pretty sure they came out on Mei out of spawn on almost every map, and then Backbone eventually would switch.
Yeah, and sometimes it was a really late swap too.
And like they held Justice to some points because it was back and forth, but ultimately it was like Justice had more, they were more comfortable in doing the Sojourn Genji, and so when Spitfire wasn't able to play the Mei and they had to mirror the Genji Sojourn, Justice were able to edge that out. And so I mean Spitfire were able to keep it close when they were able to play the Mei, but then when they had to go back to the Genji, Assassin then kind of was able to take the advantage there. And what's unfortunate is like Spitfire, and like they coming into this week, it was like to be safe in like tournament qualification, they needed to not do what they just did, because now they are in control of their destiny, but it's not an easy control of their destiny, and we'll talk about that later on when we get into like the qualification stuff. But now they're sitting at 2-3, and they don't have. If they had won one of those matches, then they'd be sitting nice. 3 wins is a good place. But now it's like they're now in amongst all the other teams. There's like 4 or 5 teams fighting for like 2 spots.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting.
We'll see where
we'll talk about it a little more.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with them moving forward. Another team I want to talk about, not because they won or anything, but because it delivered an actual. It was a fun match that we didn't think it would be. The Florida Mayhem decided they wanted to become the Chengdu Hunters for one day only. We got to see the Czech Rat once again. Junkrat returns to Nepal Sanctum, and it was a treat. And then we went over to Hollywood, and they played their patented double flex with Zen Ana. They played some Batiste. And then we went to Dorado, and they pulled out Pharmacy and made Hanbin go Diva and Edison go Cassidy. It was fun. It was fun.
The way I see it is, in this meta, like, is there a single scenario playing the normal game, playing a straight up head-to-head matchup with the meta that Florida beats Dallas right now?
Nope.
No. And so I think Florida did exactly what we've been telling people that teams like this should do, is if you can't win playing the meta, then try to make the other team uncomfortable. Try to play your game. Play your game. And, even if you don't lose, like, they weren't going to win either way. The fact that they took a map off Dallas is awesome. And I think it was definitely one to watch. It was a good one. And it'll be interesting to see, kind of going forward. I don't imagine they'll stick with some of those weird comps. Like, I think it was just trying to make Dallas uncomfortable.
Well, I think that those kind of weird comps, like, they're not going to work against the Dallas field, but I mean, if Florida Mayhem in this coming week pulls them up against New York's a team you could throw off.
Well, I think against New York, you don't need to.
Well, but it's like if you feel like you would have a better shot at doing it because you think you want to win by throwing them off guard. But it's like, you're not going to beat a San Francisco Shock, a Dallas Fuel, or even a Toronto Defiant, Houston Outlaws playing Pharmacy. But you could tell, especially on Dorado, that the first like minute or so on Dallas's attack, you could see Dallas was all like, "What? Okay, how do you play against this?" And they were like kind of messing about, trying to figure out what to play. But then once they found a way to counter it, then Mayhem just kind of crumbled.
Yeah, but I think one of the things with it is, like, if Florida's going to win, if there's a world where they're going to win, it's going to be doing something like that. Like, that's the only way they could beat Dallas or the Shock or anything. So I think more teams should do stuff like that. Like, even though it didn't work this time, like, I think it was a better shot than them just playing Jotes or whatever.
And we have to remember, this is also the team that pulled out Roadhog on Gibraltar. So, I mean, come on, if any team was going to pull out something wonky, it was going to be the Mayhem. Because not even the Chengdu Hunters went that crazy.
That's true.
So, I was just a team I wanted to mention because it was fun. That was a fun game. But the team that I really, I forgot to change the topic heading for that one. That was what the topic heading was, everyone. I messed up on production. Anyways. But this next one, I'm not going to.
Of course you are.
The Outlaws were just fine. No worries. I mean, not that we were worried, but especially against the Titans, Pelicans especially came out and was like, for Piggy.
Yeah.
He had like 14 final blows for 10 minutes against the Titans. Like, the Outlaws don't get 3-0s very often, but like that 3-0 against the Titans, like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we kind of like, I mean, we both thought coming into this week that there was a good chance that they just, fixed their mental and just dominated.
I didn't expect them to 3-0 the Titans, though. I mean, that was...
Yeah,
they
almost
3-0'd the Reign as well, but then, of course, they do the classical Outlaws thing of it has to go to map 5 first.
Yeah, and the cool thing about this is they beat the Vancouver Titans that just beat Washington. So it's like... It's a good feeling,
But wait, and we continue the cycle of weirdness. The Outlaws 3-0 the Titans, who beat the Justice, who beat the Spitfire, who 3-0'd the Outlaws. It's like very strange. But it's like the Outlaws looked so much better, and it really showed that last week was just a one-off. We don't know why they felt the way they did, but they came back with a vengeance. They were out for blood this week, and they got the blood they needed. And now they're like 9-2 on map 5s this season, which is insane. They've won more map 5s this season than they have the previous 4 seasons of their existence. They just don't.
Pretty sure they've won more map 5s than they have map 4s.
I mean, they've almost won. Well, yeah. I mean, when you win 9 map 5s and you're 12-5, that's. But granted, like 2 of those map 5s did come in tournaments, so it's like, okay, 7. But that's 7 out of your 12 wins come in map 5. That's just kind of how the Outlaws do it. But what's funny is, like, every time it happens, the Outlaws start getting, in a reverse swept situation. It's like, oh, it's Houstonable. But when you think about it, it's like the Outlaws have only been reverse swept, what, once?
Yeah.
So it's like we call it Houstonable, but in reality, that's actually not a thing. They got reverse swept by New York, but then their other 4 losses, the 3-0 loss to the Spitfire was them being mentally boomed. Okay, that's not like a normal thing. And then their other losses were week 1, Toronto Defiant, when they were the first team to pull out Tracer against the Doomfist, and then the Gladiators and the Shock. So the Houstonable thing is just going to map 5. Not so much getting reverse swept and losing. It's just, here we go. Here we go. We're going to map 5 again. And it's always stressful, though. It happens so often. They literally will go to map 5 with everybody from Atlanta to Paris Eternal. Stop, please, Outlaws. I know you like you're gonna win the map 5. But it's not good for the map difference. Just clean up the 3-0 and take the +3 map differential instead of the +1.
You don't get it. The reason, there's a strategy to it. So they do it because they figure, how can they get as much stage time as possible?
Oh, of course, the practice time.
They want to give their fans something to watch,
Maximize the token time, is that what it is?
Oh yeah, they are maximizing token.
Maximizing the token farming.
Thank you, Houston, for giving everyone tokens.
I mean, it is. I don't. They have so much experience in map 5 now, but it's like if they go to map 5, unlike in previous seasons, especially in like season 1, season 2, where it's like if they go to 5, you're like, oh, this is over. They can't win map 5s. But this season, it's like if they go to map 5. You can like Dante and Merritt especially they show up in the map 5. Merritt does not let the team lose. And Dante is just a freak of nature on the Junker Queen. There were moments, and honestly, Pelican was not as explosive in the Atlanta game as he was against the Titans. Speedily was warmed up in the second half of the series, and you kind of saw it. So the team kind of did take a back step because, like, the team, how they looked on Control versus how they looked on Escort and how they looked on Push were two completely different things. But it's like, if you can trust the Outlaws to win, you know, King of the Hill, well, then you're fine. You know, if they can win Control, then they're going to win the 5-map series, unless it's a double push week. In which case, okay, maybe not. But as we are now, the Outlaws are now 3-2 in a good spot. I'm happy moving forward with this team.
Who do they play next week?
They play the Washington Justice. So should be good. But
either way,
there is another region that does exist. Granted, it's a lot of just the Seoul Dynasty and Shanghai Dragons just running over everybody. But, you know, there's also a Philadelphia Fusion team that can't seem to figure out what they're doing. I mean, getting reverse swept by the Charge.
It's not a good feeling.
Like, I know Jimmy is a freak sometimes, right? I know that Custa loves Jimmy. But Zest was, like, doing all he could. He was doing his thing. But why do you keep playing Carpe? You got MN3 right there. We talked about this last week.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, Philadelphia Fusion, when they play Carpe, they just don't look as good.
They're not as explosive.
And they always run Carpe, it seems like.
I don't know, like,
maybe we just talk about them more when they do because they lose more, you know? Like,
I don't know, like, has MN3 like just not been looking in scrims? Does he not want to play? Because if that's not the case, then I don't see why you'd be playing Carpe basically permanently on these games, because now the Fusion have only a single win, and it's over the winless Valiant. And if
the tragic thing about it is, you know, you have this great player MN3 that isn't getting played. You know, he's one of the better DPS players out there, and he's not getting the play time that he deserves on the Fusion. And it's not like he's on a winning team and he's back up there, you know. It's not like Nero when he was on the Shock. It's like this is MN3 being benched behind Carpe. Like, it's not good.
And if the Fusion keep doing this, then they're, you know, Summer Showdown qualification is in jeopardy, but also, like, you know, playoff. I mean, the Valiant aren't going to pass them. Like, the Valiant have 2 wins, I think, right? And the Fusion have 7. So, but if they keep trending downwards, it's not looking great for them going into those play-ins. And it's like, if the other teams around them are beating on them, I mean, I'm not going to say the Charge beat on them, because they did have to reverse sweep. But I mean, if you're losing to the Charge and you're losing to the Hunters, and they play the Spark this week, if you're losing to those other teams that are around you, what do you expect to do when you get to the play-ins? You're just going to get rolled again.
Yeah.
So they need to figure out their issues, and unfortunately, they may not have a chance to do it in the Summer Showdown, and will have to do it in Countdown Cup, which is not ideal for them, and they are not in a very good spot. So Fusion, I don't care either way. You know, I'm very impartial when it comes to the Fusion, honestly, it's pretty funny watching them lose, because Bad Pachimara on Twitter just kind of like dies on the inside every time it happens. But but it is what it is. And then the final team I want to talk about is the Shock. Only because they now hold the record for most regular season wins in a row. Congratulations, Shock. You finally surpassed your rivals from 2019, from 3 years ago. You finally beat them. Bumper, you finally beat Bumper. Good job.
Good job. Good job.
Yeah, it was against New York, but I mean, even 17-0. I mean, I know the Titans went 19-0 in the regular season, but I feel like Shock this year, with how much parity there's been in the league, the fact that they've been able to rattle off 17 in a row is crazy.
Yeah, and like, we've had some pretty big meta shifts and stuff like that, and the fact that, you know, no matter what, the tragic thing is they haven't gotten anything to show for it outside of just regular season wins.
I mean, they got second place in the midseason madness.
Yeah, it doesn't count. Second place is first loser.
Yeah, just ask the Fusion. They know all about it.
Yeah. No, but it would be really cool if they were able to take a stage, and I think this is a pretty good one for
them.
them.
If the Gladiators aren't able to get in, this could be the one that they finally get it. And I mean, they play the Fuel. They play the Fuel this coming week, and I've said this before to you. I don't know if I've said it on air, but it's like, if the Shock beat the Fuel this week, a 24-0 season is, I think, in the books for them, because next stage they don't play Glads, they don't play Fuel, they play teams like London, they play the Outlaws, they play the Reign, who are our teams that, like, if the meta shift is right, like if Outlaws or Reign like show up on a day and it's like a good meta for them, maybe. But even then, you know, no one's going to be coming in as favorites against the Shock.
Yeah.
It's like this week against the Fuel is like probably the last chance anyone has of taking a regular season win off of the Shock. And if Fuel don't do it, then we may get to see the first ever perfect regular season from a team.
Yeah.
Which is
then we will have one perfectly terrible season in the league without a single win, and then another team that has a completely perfect season with all wins. So the league will have perfect scores. Shanghai season 1.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of this season. I was like, there's no one with.
No, not in the same season.
No, we'll have several, because we'll have a team that went a whole season winless, another team that went a whole season lossless, and then we have the Shock in season 2 who won a whole stage without dropping a map. Right? They had the golden stage, and then we'll have last year's Valiant did a stage or two without taking a single map. I think, right? I think they had winless, map winless stages. So we'll just have it all covered.
Yeah,
we'll have every base covered, of course.
So don't let us down, Shock.
Fuel are gonna come in and just spoil. Man, if Fuel beat the Shock this week, it's, even though it's like, yeah, okay, the Shock are 5-1. Oh, I feel like it'll like hurt way more than just like a one-off. It'll be like, dang it, we can't do it now.
Yeah. It would be tragic.
It would feel kind of bad for the Shock. But those are the matches we're going to talk about. I mean, APAC had some weird stuff go on, but it's like none of the matches were particularly like crazy. I mean, it really, all it is it's like Seoul and Shanghai beating up on the rest of APAC teams, and then the other APAC teams just like messing around.
Yeah.
Because it's like, realistically, you're coming into the Summer Showdown, and it's like, there's no way the finals aren't Seoul Shanghai, right? Like, there's like actually no way.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at these. Let's take a look at these standings, and let's look at some of these scenarios in APAC and NA. Right, the top two teams. As soon as the standings want to load on my end, both to have like top two teams that are clearly in there. And in NA, there's also the Defiant that are up there. All right, so let's look at APAC first, because there's less teams. So like Dynasty and Shanghai Dynasty haven't dropped a map.
Yeah.
And this week they play the Fusion and the Dragons. So Dynasty could very well be going into that Dragons match with 16 maps under their belt. And Shanghai will probably go into the match against Dynasty with 15 maps under their belt. So Shanghai and Dragon, they're in. But we're looking at this 3 through 6 slot, and there are 4 teams that are aiming for it, because Valiant's out. Valiant's done. What's interesting is that Hunters and Charge play each other in match 1 of the week. And the winner of that, I would say, probably is in the tournament. I mean, there are weird scenarios where you could have...
And the Charge have worse map differential, so they're more at risk. Like, if Chengdu wins, they're like guaranteed. Charge, it's a little less guaranteed, but still.
And the thing is, Chengdu plays Valiant as well. So if Chengdu beats Charge, they're in. I mean, they're going to beat the Valiant. Chengdu will get in with the 3 seed. So that would put Charge at 2 and 3, and then Fusion and Spark will get 1 at 3. Fusion plays Dynasty, they're losing that 1 and 4. So basically, the best Fusion can do is 2 and 4, because they play the Spark. So 2 and 4 max for Fusion, which means Spark would go 1 and 4, and Spark plays Charge. So it's a little weird. So if Spark beat Charge, and beat the Fusion, well, then Spark could get in. They'd have 3 wins. Fusion would only have 2. Charge would only have 2. But we could be in a weird world in which Charge lose to Hunters, but Charge beat Spark, but Spark beat Fusion. But if Spark beat Fusion, Fusion's they're going to be at 1 win. They're done. The weirder one would be like Charge beats
Chengdu, but loses to
Charge
Spark.
beats Chengdu, Spark beats Charge, Chengdu beats Valiant, and Fusion beats Spark. Because then we end up with like we end up with like 3 teams at 3-3, and then it would come down to map differential.
Maps. Yeah.
So
which could happen.
It could happen. Chengdu is the most likely to make it because they play the Valiants. They're basically guaranteed 3 wins and a decent map differential because they're not going to get rolled by the Charge. I feel like if they lose, it'd be a 3-2. So they'd be -2, and then they probably 3-0 the Valiant. So 3-3 + 1.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at the teams that I think probably will make it, it's probably going to be Hunters and Charge just based off how they look. Granted, Spark could reignite some things and beat the Charge, but it would be really cool to go into the Summer Showdown having two new teams from APAC because the first 2 tournaments, it was the same 4. But having Hunters and Charge go in there, granted, all they're doing is lining up to get smacked down to earth.
They aren't really going to win, but it would be cool if they were able to go. And who knows? You know,
like we
haven't seen.
It's really what it is. It's those league points. True. Because when we go to like the regular season standings in APAC, Chengdu is only 3 points behind Fusion. So if Chengdu go 2-0 this week and make the tournament, they tie Fusion with points and would actually pass them because they would have a better map differential and they'd be tied in wins. So Chengdu would actually jump Fusion into the 4th spot, which, I mean, that's not guaranteed playoffs yet. But if Spark don't make it, then Chengdu could jump up to 10 points and Spark are only going to be at, 12, 13. And now we're looking at that 3 seed being up for grabs, which could be huge. If we go into Countdown Cup with that 3 seed in APAC being up for grabs between Chengdu and Fusion,
that'd be crazy.
That'd be crazy. And even for Charge, making the tournament will be huge because them and Valiant are tied with points and wins, but Charge have 10 more map losses. So they're not going to beat the Valiant, head-to-head tied. So if Charge are able to just make the tournament, even if they go 0-2 this week, they probably wouldn't make the tournament if they did that. But if they're able to make the tournament and get that extra point, I mean, they're already looking better than the Valiant, so even if they miss the tournament, I think they'll still be able to make play-ins. I think the Valiant are kind of hopeless. I think Valiant are, unless they do some miraculous Countdown Cup run, their season's pretty much over.
Yeah.
So that's APAC. APAC's pretty easy, and all that it is just which 2 teams want to line up to get sucker punched.
But get a point for doing it.
Get a point for doing it. You get a point for showing up to get beat up by Seoul and Shanghai. But then we go to NA. So
and another thing, side note, sorry before.
No, side note, go ahead.
3rd place does get $20,000.
True. Well, and
so
3rd place,
there's the financial.
Does 3rd place get 2 league points, or does it jump right down to 1?
I have no idea on that.
Playoff information.
I don't remember. 2nd place gets 2. Champions get 3.
I thought champions
Everyone
got 4.
Else gets 1. Champions get 3, at least for this one.
Oh, I guess I was off. Anyways, so APAC, it doesn't really matter who qualifies. They're just going to get beaten to the ground. But then we go to NA. NA is a mess. So Shock and Fuel guaranteed in. Toronto has already booked their slot. Like 4 wins is guaranteed. It's like 4 wins, no question. There's no way you can get knocked out. So Shock, Fuel, and Defiant are in. Defiant plays London this week, and if Defiant beats London enough, and then if Shock or Fuel lose badly enough, I think Defiant could actually jump into the 2 seed. I think that's unlikely because I don't think Shock or Fuel 3-0 the other. That would be very surprising. And crazy. I don't think Defiant 3-0 Spitfire either. They could, but it's probably unlikely. So Defiant is probably sitting at that 3 seed. And as long as they don't go to map 5 against Spitfire, they can't be passed. I guess if Justice could pass them because Justice are at a +5, if Justice somehow pull an upset over the Outlaws, which if we're looking at transitive property, the Outlaws just 3-0'd the team that they lost to. So logic says there shouldn't be.
But since when has that logic followed?
Even if the Justice beat the Outlaws, though, they would have to beat them 3-0 to jump the Defiant. So Defiant are probably sitting at that 3 seed. But then when we're looking 4 through 8, there are 4 through 8 there are 9 teams in the running technically. So Justice and Titans are basically guaranteed in. Titans I don't think can fall out. There's a lot of weird tiebreaker stuff that I'm not entirely sure about because it doesn't say in terms of, because when you go down to the tiebreaking, it's like head-to-head map differential in qualifying matches if they play. But the one that's weird is strength of victory evaluated by combining league points of all teams beaten in qualifying matches. What that doesn't clarify is that looking at the team's league points in the tournament or for the season, because that changes things. Because, you know, in the tournament, a win over the Atlanta Reign only nets you, not a whole lot. But if you're looking at their season, that nets you like 12 points. So I'm not entirely sure on some of those head-to-heads, but Titans at worst are 3-3-0. I think they're fine because teams would first have to get the 3 wins, and the only teams that aren't in the top 8 currently that can reach 3 wins are Florida and New York. Florida can only get to 0. They would have to go perfect, and they would only tie Titans' map record, and I think Titans probably win. I think Titans would have the head-to-head because they beat the Justice.
Yeah.
So I think Titans and Justice are safe because Justice worse are 3-3 with a +2. Yeah, there's no way Mayhem or Excelsior, they can't even get to positive. So we're looking at what it really is a 6-team race for 3 slots. Outlaws, Spitfire, Reign, Gladiators, Mayhem, and Excelsior.
Yeah.
Spitfire, Reign, Outlaws first. If Outlaws beat Justice, they're in. They're at 4 wins. You're flat in, and Outlaws could actually jump up a couple seeds if they beat the Justice with a good enough map differential, and if Titans lose. So Outlaws are the most safe out of the 6 through 8. Outlaws are the most safe because they already are at 3 wins. So even if they lose to Justice, as long as they don't get turbo rolled, if they lose in a map 5, they're 3-3 with 0. And they would have they would have the advantage over Mayhem because Outlaws have beaten Reign and Gladiators. So the only worry would be if the Outlaws got 3-1, then they'd be at -1, which Florida could pass, or -2. So, but the Outlaws are for the most part safe. But it's Spitfire and Reign that are iffy. Spitfire going 0-2 this week hurt them quite a bit.
Puts them at 2-3. They still have a positive map differential.
They have a positive map differential, but they play the Defiant.
Yeah.
And let's say best case scenario, they lose 3-2. Right? I don't think they can beat. I think
best case scenario, they win.
I don't think they can win, though, unless Defiant choke a little bit, because Defiant are a better team. And so Defiant would have to choke. And Defiant would be playing for a chance potentially at the 2 seed. So best case scenario, they win. If Spitfire win, then they're fine because they'd be 3-3 with at worst +2. But I think it's more than likely they lose. So best case scenario loss would be a 3-2 loss, which would put them at 2-4-0. 2-4-0. They require a couple things to go their way. They would want the Atlanta Reign to lose, but they don't want the Glads to win by too much. So Spitfire would want the Glads to win, I think, by 3-2. Because anything more, if Spitfire at 2-4, 0. If Gladiators 3-0 the Reign, Gladiators then go 2-4-0, and Gladiators, I believe, would have the tiebreaker. But it's weird.
Well, yeah, so I think London actually wants Atlanta to win because Atlanta would pass London, but Atlanta surviving is fine as long as Florida and New York don't go crazy this
exactly.
week.
So
Florida and New York's map differentials are bad enough.
So really what it is both Spitfire and Reign, if they lose their matches this week, if Reign loses, they just have to hope that Gladiators don't pound them into the dirt, because then Gladiators would jump Reign. And if they win by too much and Spitfire loses by too much, then Glads jump Spitfire. So Spitfire are just hoping that the Reign Gladiators match, however it turns out, doesn't have a big map differential blowout. And
actually, I think they want the big map differential blowout because, let's say the Glads
blow out the Reign.
Blow out Reign. Reign fall out of
Reign
top
would
8.
fall
Glads
out of top
jump
8.
into it. London stays.
London would stay, but they would have to hope that neither Mayhem or Excelsior go 2-0 this week. Because Mayhem and Excelsior, if they win both their matches, will go to 3-3.
Yeah, but do you think either one of those teams is going to be able to?
So they both play Paris.
Yeah, so that's one. But...
And then they play each other.
Yeah, so one of them will get 2.
One of them will go 2-0. So you see the problem.
But do you think both of those on either, like for either team, it's going to be 2 3-0s?
No, it doesn't have to be 2 3-0s. If London loses, if the map differential...
So
it's like what London... The ideal scenario for London would be them, first off, not getting blown out by the Defiant, because that would be... That is worst case scenario.
London, every single match they've had, win or lost this tournament, they've gotten at least one map.
Okay, so worst case, one map. So that's what? -1. So Mayhem can reach the -1 at 2 and 4, but it's unlikely. So, but Gladiators would be able to reach it if they 3-0 the Reign, and that would be what Spitfire doesn't want. They don't because if Gladiators pass them in map differential and jump them, and then Mayhem or Excelsior go 2-0, Spitfire and Reign are both out, which would be crazy for them to both bomb out. So Spitfire realistically are Reign fans for the most part, because I mean they don't want to get past, but it's like Reign's already in the top 8. So they're Reign fans, or they could be Glads fans. They just don't want it to be a blowout either way. And then they're Paris Eternal fans. So you are hoping, London Spitfire fans are hoping for their EU American brethren to beat Mayhem or Excelsior, and then for the team that lost to Paris to beat the one that beat Paris, so that they go 1-1. Because then that's, kind of out of there.
Yeah.
And for Gladiators fans, they want to be able to beat Reign better than a 3-2, and then also be Paris Eternal fans. So Glads and Spitfire are like rooting for the same thing, but Gladiators are wanting the massive map differential. Spitfire are not. So every match this week in NA actually kind of matters to some extent, whether it be for seeding, whether it be for undefeated season or stage. But what's good is that Reign Gladiators, when we look at the schedule, Reign Gladiators is the first match as soon as the schedule loads. Reign Gladiators is the first match Friday. So we will know going into the rest of NA games that week what is required of Spitfire or what is required of, Mayhem and Excelsior in order to make it. Because then Paris and New York are the next game. So we will be able to see, okay, does New York need to beat Florida to get in? So we'll kind of have an idea throughout the week of where everybody goes. But the match that will really decide it all is the last day. Or the last match of the last day. Florida plays New York. That match could single-handedly determine which teams make it to the Summer Showdown.
Yeah.
Because if both
crazy.
Florida and New York beat Paris, and London loses to Toronto, and Gladiators, blow out the Reign, or the Reign beat the Gladiators, London specifically will be looking at this match and hoping that it doesn't blow them out, because it won't be good for their season in terms of league points. Because if they don't make the tournament, they're going to just sit at 11 points. And then if Reign make it, well, then Reign will jump up at least another point. Outlaws will probably jump up another point or two, because Spitfire is 7th. They're in the play-in spot. And it's like play-ins are better than nothing, but ideally you want that guaranteed top 6. Because play-ins, especially when you've got teams like Justice in the play-ins, you don't want to face play-in Justice.
Yeah.
So this week, for once, we actually get a really exciting final week to tournament play. Every match actually matters for once.
It's going to be exciting. I'm excited for it.
And the script writers really put those games in order. You get the Atlanta Glads match first, and you put the one that literally could determine the fate of like 4 teams dead last. Very last match. So every match is, for the most part, a banger. I mean, Titans Uprising isn't really a banger because Titans can't get knocked out. So I guess that's probably the lone, boring match. But all of the other ones are exciting. to some extent.
Yeah.
Because like even Spitfire Defiant, it's like if Spitfire are able to win, well then no worries, they're in. Go Spitfire. So, yeah, it's fun. Qualification. How about some power rankings though?
Go. Let's get this done.
Let's start with APAC, shall we?
Yep.
So,
Easy. Seoul, Shanghai.
I'm adding another tier break. I definitely think there's 2 tier breaks there. There's 2 tier break. After how badly the Hunters got brutalized this week, it's a 2-horse race. The rest of APAC, whatever. The Hunters are third. I think the Hunters are solid third best team in APAC, right? You would agree with that? And then I think after this week, I think Charge are fourth. Spark haven't
right
shown,
now with this meta.
Spark haven't shown any signs that they should be the 4th best team. So I think it's Hunters, Charge for 4th and 5th. Spark for 6th. Spark 5th.
Valiant.
And then Fusion and Valiant are just the... I mean, Valiant is... You can't even put a tier break there because Valiant took Fusion to 5. Valiant is the basement of sadness and Fusion is just sadness.
Yeah.
But there's 2 tier breaks. I mean, Dragons and Dynasty are so much better than the rest of APAC. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
When the 2 of them combined have only dropped 1 map to the rest of the APAC teams, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it feels like the East kind of... APAC has this thing where it's like... I feel like are at similar skill levels as the teams in the West, except you just don't have that middle tier that the West has. It's like if you had Chalk and Fuel and then nothing up until Boston, you know, like
true. Actually, yeah, that is a good way to put it. So APAC is Dynasty Dragons 1-2, and then Hunters, Charge, Spark, Fusion, Valiant. I mean that's pretty cut and dry. APAC I feel like it's pretty easy. NA, though, has changed up a little bit. Shock Fuel are still 1-2 tier break. Yeah. I don't think
Defiant.
And then I think Outlaws have claimed their 4th. I think Outlaws have claimed their 4th back after their performances against Titans and Rain this week.
I'd be okay putting them there.
But then we've got a little bit of an interesting kind of set here. I think Rain... Do we think Rain or Glads could go 5th? Because I think that... Because Rain just beat Spitfire, so obviously Rain is above Spitfire. And if Rain played Justice, I would pred Rain. If Gladiators played Justice, I would pred Glads. And even if Glads played Spitfire, I'd probably consider predding Glads. Because, I mean, Glads' 4 losses have come to the top 4 teams in our NA power rankings.
Yeah.
And it's not like they were blown out either. They literally went to 5 against Fuel and Outlaws. So I think you could make an argument for Gladiators 5th or Rain 5th, depending on which way you lean.
I feel like Glads haven't been winning
matches
this split, and I think because of that you can't put them.
So we put Rain 5th just outside of the fact that they've won more matches.
Yeah.
But then I think you can put Glads underneath Rain. I think Glads look better. And then Justice above Spitfire because they just won. But then what's weird is Titans beat Justice. So where do we view Titans in... Because I think Titans could... Because they beat Justice. So it's like they can't be in the lower tier.
Honestly... Right now, I would be fine putting Titans under Glads. Justice, just because, like, they're looking good right now.
They're looking like a solid middle of the pack team.
Yeah.
So that's our middle tier. So Shock, Fuel, tier break. Defiant, Outlaws, Rain, Gladiators, Titans, Justice, Spitfire, tier break. And then we have the tier of sadness. Boston looks pretty tragic.
Yeah, I think Mayhem isn't... Like, they aren't winning, but they...
I mean, they took a map off
Fuel.
They're
trying new things, and they took a map off Fuel, so I think that puts them at the top of this tier. And then I would probably go Uprising XL.
You'd go Uprising XL Eternal?
Yeah.
I can get on board with that. We'd have.
I could see XL being above.
I could see any 4 of these teams beating each other. Honestly, like even Paris, I could honestly wouldn't be surprised if they like beat Excelsior. And it's like, so these four are in no, they could beat anyone. I think this middle tier, though, I think it's in a good order. Like, I don't see, like, the only teams I could see maybe beating Defiant are like Reign, Outlaws could take them there. But like, I don't see Defiant, Outlaws, Reign, or Glads losing to Titans, Justice, or Spitfire. Like, at the current form.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Outlaws literally just beat the crap out of the Titans. I mean, it was close, but it was a 3-0. So it was like,
yeah,
it can only be so close. So I think this is a good indicator of if we, based our power ranking, if we based the final week of predictions off of our power rankings, then Outlaws would make it, Reign would make it, Gladiators would miss, Titans and Justice would make it, and Spitfire would not. Because we would have Mayhem beating Excelsior and Eternal.
I think there's a difference between power rankings and real world. Like, just because a team's above another team on this power ranking doesn't mean that I think they'll necessarily
and
win that
it's
game.
But it's like flip Reign and Glads. Either outcome doesn't really affect the Spitfire because those two teams would just flip places for the most part. It's really like these bottom tier teams are really what's determining Spitfire's fate right now. Because like Glad's Reign doesn't matter which direction it goes, unless it's a Glad's 3-2, and then Spitfire still have like the edge over them. So it's really just the four teams of New York Mayhem, Glads, and Reign that Spitfire are looking at, and looking at those 5 matches in particular to determine their fate. Or Spitfire can just come out and beat the Defiant. There's your ticket, Spitfire. Don't lose to Defiant and you're in.
Yeah, easy.
Easy. Just don't lose to the third best team in NA. Easy. Easy. There's no problem. All right. It's prediction time now. We've got bangers this week. We literally have like 4 undefeated teams playing each other this week in just fireworks shows. But those aren't the first matches we're predicting. The first match we're predicting is actually, Spitfire potential fate. Reign versus Gladiators.
Yeah.
And there's 2 ways to look at this. You can go, well, Gladiators have only beaten the Paris Eternal, and Reign went to 5 against Outlaws and beat the Spitfire. So it's like, how much do we trust Gladiators to punch back and like try to play for their tournament lives? Or do we think Reign will just show up like they did against the Outlaws? I don't know.
Well, I think it's an interesting one, but there's only one team that can win this.
And that would be?
It's obviously the Reign. It's easy Reign win. The reason why, Speedily has, instead of 3 days of practice, he has like
a week and a half now.
Practice. And so he's gonna just single-handedly diff the entire Lads team. Yeah, he's gonna make Kevster look like
a pedestrian.
Lamester. Yeah,
or that
pedestrianster. You have to be careful with shortening that word.
I agree with you. I think Reign
easy
look really good against the Outlaws. If they play that way against the Gladiators, then I think they'll be fine. It should be a good match though. But I do think Reign, are more experienced in winning, and by more experienced, I mean I guess they only have one more win. But I mean it was a better quality opponent in the Spitfire versus the Glads who've just beat the Paris Eternal. Good job, Glads. I don't know about that. And I forgot to mention before, I clawed 2 extra wins back, so we're now tied at 50 correct predictions. Once again tied. Thanks, Charge. Thanks, Reign. I appreciate it. Thanks for getting me back up there. Curses. So we're in agreement with the Reign. So no differences there. But now here come the banger matches. Shock versus Fuel. Will Fuel put an end to Shock's regular season win streak, or will Shock potentially go on to win every regular season match?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, and I think it comes down to one thing really, and that is which team has more power. And the answer to that question is which team has more fuel, because the fuel is going to win. The fuel is going to knock Shock down and teach them who's boss. And yeah, I'm going
Really?
Fuel.
You're
I
going
think Fuel's
Fuel
gonna.
on this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
I'm of the opinion I'm of the idea I think Shock are gonna go undefeated this season. I think this is the match that will like make or break the season for the most part. Like this is probably the last chance for that.
I think it's too good a storyline to happen. It's gonna get ended.
You think it's too good of a fairy tale? Like, yep. I think it'll be close. If this doesn't go to 5, we'll be a little surprised, regardless of which team wins. But like when I look at the matchups, like Hanbin is better than Kaluj, but Proper is the DPS line of the Shock is better than the Fuels. And then it's like it comes down to the support line, and like Violet. I think Violet Finn versus Chio and Fielder. Like Violet's kind of a menace on Lucio. He has like the highest final blows per 10 minutes and like the highest offensive assists per 10 on Lucio, and then Finn is Finn. I think the Shock are just more. There's just more there, and Proper definitely has a much higher ceiling than Sparkle / Doha and Edison.
I think Shock is the better team generally, and I'm a Shock fan. But
you just don't want the storyline.
Yeah. No, and also I feel like Dallas Fuel have looked really good in this meta, and it's kind of like with the whole Zarya thing. They had Zarya and they were the best Zarya team because like when they find a team comp that clicks, they can perform better than anyone else at that team.
True.
Comp.
I mean, they did just drop a map to the Florida Mayhem though, so.
Yeah, but Florida Mayhem was doing crazy stuff. Shock isn't going to do crazy stuff.
You say that. Don't doubt the crusty crack pipe.
I do doubt it. I
no,
think
they're not going to do any shenanigans.
Straight up,
this will be a mirror. It'll be a mirror the whole time.
And I think Fuel, when they like the Fuel's biggest issue is when they can't figure out the meta. When they know the meta and they play the meta, they play it better than anyone else. And I think that's
this will be the first time that Shock and Fuel will be playing the same meta into each other, because when they played in Kickoff Clash, Shock were playing a lot of the Winston comps and Fuel were doing the Zarya comps. So we actually haven't seen these two teams face off in a direct mirror. And I think what this will come down to is really Kaluj versus Hanbin.
Yeah.
And who wins the Junker Queen matchup. Because if Hanbin is able to diff Kaluj by a good amount, then Proper will have to do more than I think he'll be able to. Because he would have to really roll over Sparkle and Edison, or Doha, I guess, if he's in. But either way, this should be
and really I think match. More specifically, I would say it's not just about the Junker Queen head-to-head, but the ult usage on each side, especially the support ults, and how they use that to win fights. Like who can best use their ults to win fights. And I think, that this is going to be the best match of Junker Queen we're going to see, I think, in this stage at least.
That's bold, considering Dragons and Dynasty are playing this week as well.
Yeah, but it's APAC. APAC is if mid-season showdown showed us anything, it showed us that the APAC plays at lower level than the West.
I mean, that holds some merit, I suppose. But I mean, Dragons and Dynasty are running away with it. So it's like, even though, maybe they may be playing at a lower level, it'll still look good when they're playing each other.
Yeah, but I don't think it'll be as good as the Fuel Shot.
You think the Fuel Shot game will look better? So luckily, this is the very last APAC game of the week. So it's like the grand finale of the regular, the qualifying matches are Dynasty Dragons for who gets the 1 seed. Who gets to beat on the 4th seed harder than the other team beats on the 3rd seed.
Yeah.
So I think this will be a really good match. Every time these two teams have played every time they've played, it's been a map 5 banger, hasn't it?
I think we've had one.
I think there was one. I think Dynasty did a stomp somewhere in Midseason Madness. When Dragons were not, when they were off their. But usually this goes to map 5. And I'm pretty sure these two teams have the longest head-to-head record out of any team. I'm pretty sure they've played we're talking in the teens.
Yeah, they're also the only 2 APAC teams right now with a positive map differential.
Yeah, they literally just stole. They're actual map thieves.
They're at +11, +12,
+12.
and then Chengdu with a -1.
-1. They
them.
actually just went and stole all of the maps from APAC.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I mean, Seoul hasn't dropped a single map this
True, they haven't.
But Shanghai's only dropped one. So it's like, yeah, it could go either way.
I think it's like when you do head-to-head comparisons, it's like who are you and Lip versus Fitz and Stalker. I think who are you edges out Stalker for a better Genji, because who are you is like the Genji player. Like Stalker's awesome as well, but who are you is like the
Makes you say over and over again, who are you? How are
and
you
then
so
Lip
good?
versus Fitz, I feel like I trust Lip more than I trust Fitz. I don't know why. I just kind of have. I don't know. Lip has looked really good, but so has Fitz.
Yeah.
And then like tank line, Smurf and Void. Smurf has looked better than Void. I mean, that's obviously not by a large margin. And then you look.
And I think because we haven't seen them go head to head on the Junker Queen, it's going to be really interesting to actually see it.
Yeah, and then you go to the support line, and it's like Vindame versus Lee Jae-gon on the Lucio. Lee Jae-gon is a better Lucio. But then it's like Prophet versus Izzyaki on the Brig, which is like not a comparison I thought I would be making this season.
Yeah.
For the other main support / flex support spot, for it to be Izzyaki versus Prophet. And Prophet, I think, is statistically the best Brig in the league. But when you're on the team that hasn't dropped a map, that does tend to happen. So I don't know, honestly.
Yeah, this is a terrible one. Who put this for prediction?
I did, because a banger.
Uncredible.
I feel like every time this match has happened, though, we've predicted the same. Like, we've gone with our same teams every time, I think. I don't think we've ever.
Have we?
I don't think we've never agreed on this. When they've teams.
Who do I always go on?
You usually go with a Dynasty.
Yeah, I was kind of feeling Dynasty is the sad thing. So I'm like.
And I usually go with the Dragons. I think every time they've played in the regular season, I'm pretty sure that's how it usually goes.
Yeah.
And I think,
okay, let's stick with that then.
And I think they're tied 1-1. They're tied 1-1 in regular season matchups as well. So we're two different as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. One sidebar here. I'm pretty sure like you beat me on APAC Preds way more than.
I'd have to go back and look, and we'll do that.
We have to, because I'm like pretty sure, because like I feel like every time we go into APAC matches for Preds, all the ones worth Predding, I struggle.
Anytime we agree, we both lose, but then when we disagree, it's usually me that comes out on top.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, at least, which is why it's like it's dangerous for me to go alone. But I'm gonna go with
Soul's
the Dynasty.
Soul's a good pick. All right, that is the only APAC game worth betting this week.
Yeah.
So we return back to NA with Spitfire versus Defiant.
Yeah. And it's like, the thing is, this is just mean, because I know why you put this map. You think it'll be an easy +1 for you.
Oh, here we go again.
And so I just think, it's kind of cruel to do that to me.
I put this on here expecting you to pick Defiant. I'm going to be honest.
But the funny thing about it, the great thing is, you're going to lose another point not putting Spitfire, because Spitfire are obviously going to win. And it's going to be awesome. Like, I know it kind of like makes the rest of our discussion about like what could happen this week kind of just flushes it down the toilet, because if London wins, they're like guaranteed. And that's what's going to happen. And it's going to be great. And it's like, as soon as you think, man, Spitfire are just doomed, that's when they win, and that's what's gonna happen.
Last time we said they were doomed, they went and beat the Boston Uprising.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're gonna do the same thing, except against Toronto Defiant. And the thing is, Toronto Defiant, yeah, this tournament cycle, they're looking really solid. They're the third best team. But when it comes down to it, it's still the Toronto Defiant. Like
True.
It's not like they're some legendary unbeatable team, like it's the Toronto Defiant.
But
like,
it's their homestand.
So
they've got the home field advantage.
They'll still make it to the homestand if they
No,
lose
they want to
this.
go in solid.
Yeah, they'll be a solid 4-2. And it's going to be great. And London's going to win. And that's
Defiant.
just how it is. They're going to get Backbone diff. Backbone's
going to diff, although.
He's going to get player of the game for his epic Genji play.
Landon and Admiral are going to take down Churong Twilight.
Yeah, exactly.
What happened last time they played? When have they played?
They did first stage, but I can't remember.
Defiant probably beat them just because Spitfire was still figuring themselves out in the first stage. That was so long ago. Stage 1 doesn't even whatever happened there doesn't really matter.
But yeah, I think one of the big things about it though, I think it's goofy bread and rice over here pretting Spitfire for everything. But when it comes down to it, it's like every time Spitfire loses this stage, it's because Backbone's getting diffed on the Genji.
Well, and I worry that they're going to come out of Defiant and keep trying to force the May again.
Yeah, and they could, but depending on the maps that come out,
they played May on Gibraltar.
Yeah, but if they don't get Gibraltar, they get maps that are more May friendly.
Do they have the maps set yet?
I don't think so.
What's the map pool for this game? I can't. I don't think they do. Dang it. That would be helpful to know. Because I think if Nepal, if it's like Nepal, and I think Spitfire typically win the escorts because Midtown and Hollywood are both May maps. But if it's like if it's like Nepal, Hollywood, whatever escort, and payload would have to be. None of the payload maps are really May friendly though, because it's like Circuit Royal would probably be your best one, because Gibraltar and Junkertown definitely aren't. Until you get to like third point. And then push that can be Coliseum is better for it, but even then it's whatever. Then control again, you don't get Nepal again. So they're really because if the map pool goes and Gibraltar's in the pool and they go to Busan and stuff, it's not friendly.
Like I said, like I think there will be a lot that goes into it, but I think no matter what, it should be close. But I think Spitfire will win.
You said that last week against the Rain.
Yeah, and it happens. You win some, you lose some.
True.
Spitfire Preds are still a net positive for me and a net negative for you.
Are they?
So I'm pretty sure.
I don't think so. Because, this stage, the only one that I got wrong was... Because remember, I predded the Mayhem against Spitfire. And then you predded them against Boston. Those two canceled out. You predded against Outlaws. I predded against Rain. Those two canceled out. So we're dead even for this stage. Because then...
but I'm saying Spitfire themselves.
Spitfire themselves? Well, I predded them against...
Over the year...
I'm looking back to season, to stage, to kick off Clash. You predded Spitfire over Outlaws. Outlaws won. But then I predded Rain over them. And so that canceled out. But then you... predded Spitfire over Glads for some reason.
Oh, because it's beautiful.
And that didn't go your way at all.
Yeah, but I think
we'd have to go back and look. We'd have to go back. I think at the end of the season we'll go back and look how do the APAC pred stat, and we'll look at predictions per team. We'll look at successful pred rate, and it'll be really funny if you have higher Outlaws pred rate and I have higher Spitfire pred rate. We're just better at predding the other person's team.
I think I might have higher Outlaws.
I think you do after this stage because
of this stage,
because of the Glads match and because of the
it was Atlanta was the other one, right?
No, we didn't have Atlanta on there.
No, who was it? I can't remember.
It was Spitfire because you correctly predded the loss.
That's right.
So those will be stats we'll look at. There's still one more game to pred though. This one, depending on how the Spitfire game goes, could mean a whole lot.
I'm assuming you're pretting Defiant on that.
Yes, I am pretting Defiant on that. Mayhem New York, which ultimately the winner of this match isn't technically important unless one of them loses to Paris. So it's like the winner isn't inherently important in terms of the grand scheme of things, but it's just who is the better, worse team. It's weird because one team has Yaki on it, who can sometimes just go crazy, and then the other team has Gunba and his crazy ideas.
Yeah, I think if they both just head-to-head play meta, I think on most days Mayhem will win.
Mm-hmm.
If New York is popping off, like I feel like this 100% comes down to how New York's looking, like if Yaki's popping off or not. Because I think, you know, if New York's filling it, then they fill it. And I think a lot of it will come down to how matches leading up to this match go, because like if this does determine whether or not a team makes it, and if that team's XL, I think they win. But I'm gonna pred Mayhem. I think Mayhem wins it.
I agree with you there. I agree with you there because I really want Mayhem to just do something silly. I want Gumba and McGravy to come out and just play some dumb stuff against the NYXL, because the NYXL aren't going to be able to adapt. No way. I mean, they were able to take a map off Fuel playing Batiste. And if they can do it to the Fuel, I think they could definitely pull funny stuff out against New York.
Yeah.
But I think you do have a point. If they come into this match and both of them beat Paris and it's like loser basically goes home, then I think New York will have a lot more to play for. But if there's nothing on the line, like if both teams lose to Paris, Mayhem win, because New York recently has looked tragic. Whereas Mayhem have just been trying, developing their identity as the silly fun team of NA. So you give them points for that. You give them some points for the creativity.
Yeah.
So we now end, as we always do, with play of the week, of course. And there's two because they share a bit of a theme, of course. And
kind of the theme of the season.
Yeah, it's kind of the theme of the season, We've had a lot of C9s, but this week we also had a B9 and a D9. Bob C9'd the Spark, which was really funny. EasyHunt just kind of throws it out there, and I think Spark didn't realize that Bob was so close to the payload that he was going to push it in, because he doesn't look like he's like well into that doorway on Junkertown. I didn't even think he was close enough for it, but it happens. So we had a Bob 9, a B9, so we have a B9, a C9, and then you ever just get C9 by a door? Because the Atlanta Reign did. The Atlanta Reign got D9'd. And what's funny is someone on Reddit actually looked at it. The Reign touched the payload a tenth of a second too early. So the time window to trigger overtime is touch the objective within 3 seconds. Of overtime triggering. It was 3.1 seconds. Oh. Right as the door started closing, they touch it for just literally a frame. And so they thought they had it, and then the doors just closed. I was laughing so hard. I was like, I have never seen someone just get denied by a door so hard as the Atlanta Reign did right there.
Yeah, that's pretty...
Now, I think they probably still would have lost the fight because they were in frantic mode and they would have had to funnel through those chokes. So I think Outlaws probably still would have taken that fight. But in the off chance that Reign are able to win that fight, I mean, that's series changing right there. Potentially. So, we had some unique C9s this week. So we're going through, we had a B9, a C9, a D9. I don't think there's any ability that starts with an A that you can get a niner off of. Unless you accretion someone off the payload, but that wouldn't be an A9. That would just be a knocking them off the payload.
Unless you're not on the payload, and then you go to touch right as accretion pulls you up.
But no, that's just a boop. We don't call those C9s.
No, that's
We just call those unlucky.
Yeah.
So I don't think
we'll have to think. There's got to be something.
if
Anna C9s,
an A9,
could that be an A9?
We would really be stretching. I don't even know what an E would be. EasyHan would have to 9 it. That'd be an E9. We've had a Y9, you know. Oh Youngjin.
I've just gotta say, this week was so like bittersweet for me because it's like on the Overwatch side of things, it was so sad because Spitfire lost.
Mm-hmm.
But Spitfire Cloud9, right?
And Cloud9 they qualified for Worlds, didn't they?
Cloud9 on League of Legends qualified for Worlds, defeating so going into playoffs they were 5th seed, and they beat the number 1 seed team to make it, to guarantee their spot in Worlds, and in pretty dominant fashion too. It was 3-1, but on the 3 games that they won, it was just cover to cover, just domination.
So what we're hearing is that Spitfire are going to clinch a playoff spot by beating the Shock next stage.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course. Okay.
Yeah,
it rhymes
that's
like
the
poetry.
Thing. That's the thing about Cloud9. Cloud9 will win. They will find a way.
Well, they didn't last year.
Have already, won the season.
Many ages ago with a completely different team.
Yeah, but it's going to happen this year.
Hottie is going to carry them.
Yeah.
Hottie and Backbone on the back of
Backbone. Yeah.
Backbone's May is going to carry them to a championship.
Hey, next meta it's going to be
May. We're going to go back to May Reinhardt.
It's going to be it's going to be like a May. Yeah.
We're basically going to go to kickoff. Awesome. We're just going to go back to the kickoff clash meta is what you're saying.
And I guess we could talk about this more in a future episode, but I feel like dream future meta
for your team,
next stage. No, just in general. Orisa. I want to see Orisa meta.
Orisa Torb, let's go.
Ooh, Orisa Torb, May.
That sounds terrible.
And then
it would be like
Batiste,
Bap. It would be like Bap, like Ana or something. Bap Zen.
Yeah.
That's dumb. We need to stop.
That's future meta.
We're off the stop right now. We've got one more final week before Summer Showdown, and every match in NA at least matters. APAC, technically it does matter, but all the APAC teams are doing is line up to get knocked down hard by Shanghai and Seoul, so they matter.
You never know. Chengdu's gonna come.
Chengdu literally got rolled by both of them already.
It was training.
Yeah, they got
It's like the anime story arc.
They take the training weights off
by the big boss, and then they go again, and they've powered up. Yeah.
Maybe. I hope everyone enjoys this week's of matches. Hopefully it's fun. Hopefully get some real close qualification last minute scenarios. So enjoy the matches. Yeah. We'll catch you all next week.
Bye.